Okay, so what was Disney afraid of with the Rotten Tomatoes want to see percentage for Captain Marvel? You can see here on the 18th of February, we start off with 85%, and then we can watch the extremely rapid decline all the way down to 27% when Rotten Tomatoes changed how they do things and stopped dislikes from being put onto their website for who wants to see films or who doesn't want to see films. Because the film's scheduled to be released on the 8th of March, so if we take a look up to the 7th of March, what could the score have been had things been allowed to continue? Now, if we play it extremely safe, we can assume that the likes and the dislikes would have been going at around about the rate they were going on the 26th of February. Now, that's not necessarily true because the dislikes were nearly growing at an exponential rate, but if we just take what you might call the best case scenario, let's have a little look to see what would have happened by the 7th of March. So 20% is the absolute best case scenario that Disney or Marvel could have hoped for their want to see percentage on Rotten Tomato. So whether through fortuitous luck that they just happened to put an 18-month change that was already in play, or if they're pretending that it was an 18-month plan, the 20% score will be hidden from most of the audiences, which is probably a good thing for the box office, or at least for the opening weekend for Captain Marvel, before there's any actual real reviews that people can trust. But if we take it back to the 27% want to see area where the voting was all banned, what kind of scenario is perhaps more realistic than 20%, or how bad could it have gotten? Now, if we presume that the exponential growth of the dislikes or the do not want to sees would continue, which might not be practical, but who knows with the amount of interest on the internet what could happen. But if the growth continued at that rate, we can see here what exactly would have happened. So you get 23, 17, 11, 7, 4, 2%, 1%, 1%, 0%. So it doesn't actually hit 0%, it'll hit 0.4%, but the way that Rotten Tomatoes rounds things down, 0% would actually be what would have been displayed. Now, again, it's probably wouldn't actually happen. We'll never know, unfortunately. But if the growth of the do not want to sees continued with what we'd seen in the last week or so, that's what the actual score would have been on the Rotten Tomatoes website. So Rotten Tomatoes is owned by Fandango, and Fandango is 70% owned by Comcast, which owns Universal, and it's 30% owned by Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers and Universal basically control, or could control by ownership, Rotten Tomatoes. Sony is on record as saying that they dislike the want to see score. Fox has been on record and actually wrote a paper on how much they dislike it. Fox is now owned by Disney. So in the first place, it seems like a massive conflict of interest that film studios can own a film reviewing site and have film studios now banded together to protect Disney and in general just protect the film industry from what consumers are saying.